This is Wildcat Country.
It's only right. The ball's in his hands. A milestone victory for Arizona. Simon says championship.
All the inside scoop on U of A athletics.
It's up for the end zone. Arizona has scored a touchdown. Wildcats win.
Let's go to work, brother.
Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Backcourt Marketing. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale here. And for once, Shane, we're not talking about a loss. We're talking about, well, a bye week, and that's good. Going into what is a big show this week. Really excited for this one. I'm just going to lay it out before we get going. We have two guests, past and present, of Arizona football. Scooby Wright, our buddy, who's the best defensive player in the country in 2014, and probably the best Arizona defensive player that we've seen, at least in our time watching Wildcat football, joins us. Always good to catch up with him. And then, Shane, you had a chance to sit down with Drake Anderson, who's running back number 6 on this year's squad, transfer from Northwestern, and looking forward to hearing what he has to say about this year's team and some optimism going forward. But, all right, Shane, we saw UCLA lose to ASU, and that's 2 weeks after they lost to Fresno State. This UCLA team is not nearly as good as everybody thought they were at the beginning of September. So I'm going to ask you right off the start, and I know it's a repetitive question. Do you really think Arizona might have a chance this week?
They might. They might. I'm trying to suppress that as much as possible and just be prepared for the worst. The bye week came at the right time for these guys, but something that our buddy Jeff Dean mentioned last week and was amplified this last weekend. I think now there have been 34 losses by teams ranked in the top 25. So that just tells you how much parity there is outside of Alabama and Georgia. There may be a couple other teams in the Big Ten. There's not really a lot of dominant teams. You think about UCLA earlier this year lost to Fresno State, which just lost to Todd Graham's Hawaii team. So that tells you all you need. In fact, I had to go back and look because I saw that Fresno State was up by 2 touchdowns. I thought, okay, well, they're going to take care of business. And then all of a sudden, wait, Fresno State lost to Todd Graham just now? So all this to say, of course, there's a chance. We saw some good things out of the Oregon game. They hung with the Ducks for 3 quarters. I still think Oregon might have overlooked them a bit. And, of course, we saw Oregon's not really that good. They just lost to Stanford in overtime. So you have to keep that in mind. But UCLA looked very beatable against ASU. ASU is a better team than Arizona. But they looked very beatable, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So, Jordan Mcleod can take a step forward. He's had 2 weeks as the bona fide QB1, or he'll have 2 weeks going into this game. He limits the mistakes, stops playing hero ball a little bit more, decides to throw the ball away, check it down, maybe take a sack or two. Then, yeah, I think Arizona can hang with it. We'll do our picks at the end of the show, but I certainly would expect them, based on what I saw from the Oregon game, for them to at least be competitive and take another step forward as opposed to taking steps back, which they did week 1 through week 3.
All right, I'm going to give you 2 X factors, Shane, and these are kind of bizarre X factors, but just roll with it. Number 1, it's family weekend in Tucson, which generally means that there will be more people in the stands than you would normally expect, right? So that could help Arizona to get that extra fan support. If it gets, if it's a close game going into the second half, you're going to have a buzz in that stadium, in all likelihood that we would probably not see otherwise. And probably won't see, for example, in 2 weeks when they play Washington on a Friday night. I mean, that game is probably going to be a ghost, considering there's a lot of high school football going on, and that audience will take away from Arizona. That is going to hurt us. Okay, not this week, though. All right, number 2. We're recording this Wednesday night, and something was made light of it, and you touched on it a little bit on your Twitter feed. Jedd Fisch came out this week and said he interviewed with Chip Kelly in 2013 to be on the Philadelphia Eagles staff. Chip Kelly then came out and denied that. If you're Jedd Fisch, you got to look at that as a big FU, saying this guy does not respect me.
Well, so you're taking it that Jedd Fisch was remembering everything correctly, and Chip Kelly's just basically making up that they didn't have that conversation. Because I don't know. I don't know and I'm sure Jedd Fisch, I think, is going to talk again on Thursday before we're recording this, and I'm sure he'll be asked about it then to clarify. But that was kind of bizarre. I don't think it's a big deal one way or the other, but Jedd Fisch says, "Oh yeah, I talked with Chip Kelly. I don't know if he said he interviewed. He talked to him about a job in Philadelphia, and Chip Kelly said, yeah, that didn't happen." So
Chip Kelly doesn't have the most sterling of reputations, though, Shane. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it matters that much. It's bizarre. It's bizarre, okay. and I'm looking forward to Jedd Fisch being asked about it. Probably by the time this podcast gets out, he'll have been asked about it. But
let's say Jedd says, yeah, I did talk to him. Mm. That, to me, if I was Jedd Fisch, I'd say that's an insult that Chip doesn't remember that. And Chip went on in his mini interview there that was, yeah, Jedd, we've known each other for years. Mm. But if I'm Jedd, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to prove this dude wrong. This is my first chance to go head to head against him. He was the guy when Jedd wasn't kept on at UCLA. Chip took over. Their paths have crossed a little bit indirectly. If I'm Jedd, of all games that you want to have your guys ready, coming off a bye week against a UCLA team that laid an egg, literally, in the second half, scored 0 points against an ASU defense that, let's be honest, really isn't that great that I've seen. I mean, this is a game that I know UCLA is favored by almost 17 points. But I'll tell you, I think Arizona's going to make this one interesting. And if I'm Jedd Fisch, this would be a great time for your first win as a Wildcats head coach.
First of all, it's taking everything within me to not correct you when you said they literally laid an egg. I'm going to move past. I'm going to move past.
Sorry about
Yes. No, it's okay. It's my thing. It's my problem, not yours. But yes, it would be a fitting first win for Jedd Fisch, certainly against the team where he got his only head coaching experience. And plus he did, he knows some of these guys. He knows Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who's definitely taken a leap forward this season, but he knows him well. Neither of us were impressed with him when we saw him in Tucson a couple of years ago, but he definitely looks like a better quarterback now. But it is interesting, you and I were at the last Arizona UCLA game in Tucson. It was Arizona's most recent home win. The following week, they went to Boulder and beat Colorado, which was their most recent win period, and that is now officially over 2 years ago. It's kind of funny the schedule lines up exactly the same way this season. I'm not saying it's meant to be if they're going to win these next two games, but it is interesting how that all lines out. Yes, I expect Arizona to be competitive at home against UCLA. I don't necessarily expect them to win. I certainly don't expect them to lose by over 17 points, which is what I think part of the spread is right now. Let me just say something about fan attendance. And it's something that, Jedd Fisch has been hit with as far as just the harsh reality of the situation. You put a product on the shelf at a grocery store. You can put all the bells and whistles, point a bunch of arrows to it and a bunch of lights, and put some scantily clad cheerleaders around to try to attract people to the product. The bottom line is, if the product stinks, people aren't going to keep buying it. The only way you're going to sell it is if it's a good product, and Arizona football is not a good product right now. Now, if that changes, if Arizona beats UCLA, you'll probably see more fans at the next home game. But that's the only way that it's going to happen. So I respect what Jedd Fisch has done. I think that he's trying to instill all these new traditions and all that. First of all, traditions seem, or usually, like Jeff, you mentioned this last week, they're more organic, really. So I get what he's trying to do, but the fan support will come when the wins come. Now, do I think Arizona would have beaten NAU with a packed, loud home crowd? Probably. They probably would have found a way to win that game. But I also don't hold it against the fans that Arizona is winless at this point, because people have a lot of options to spend their money, especially us here in the Valley, and people are going to spend it on stuff that where they're guaranteed to get some entertainment. And right now, Arizona football just hasn't offered that.
But hold on a second, Shane. If Arizona was undefeated in top 3 in the country, facing NAU in this third game of the year, do you think it's going to be a sellout at Arizona Stadium? Because I don't.
Might be close.
People don't care about NAU. Alabama doesn't sell out against when they play, Eastern Kentucky or whatever garbage they schedule.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. My only thing is, because we had Jedd Fisch on a few weeks ago, and he said basically, well, how about, because people say, well, we'll win if you come out. And he said, well, how about if you come out, we'll win. And it's a great point. If the fan support is there, the team is going to play better. We've seen that at Mcleod Center over and over. A lot of games where Arizona basketball did not deserve to win the game, and the crowd dragged them over the finish line. Mm-hmm. So we don't see that as much with football. But I don't necessarily blame fans for not coming out right now. It would be nice if they did. I know you're a better fan than I am. You're there, win or lose, and it's been all losing lately. And you're going to be at the next game. I know you plan to be there as well. But I just, like I said, I just think, Jedd Fisch, I know he tweeted about, hey, Tucson has this many people. If this percentage comes out, we'll sell it out. It just doesn't work that way. So
well, and the other thing that Arizona does where they do it wrong, and then we'll move on, Shane, is they should tarp that upper deck. There's no reason, condense. Why do we have people sitting up there in the third tier on the the east side of Arizona Stadium? Tarp that thing off and force everybody to be on that west side, and let's fill up that west side of the stadium where you're going to have people. It's a little bit closer to the field. It's going to be louder. I mean, that's where I think Arizona, they just don't get. It's not that hard of a thought. Don't you want to see, at least for TV purposes, instead of scattered here, there, everywhere, condense it?
I would agree with you if Arizona hadn't sold out those seats before. And they did that at Sun Devil Stadium. They got rid of a lot of those upper seats, which they hardly ever sold out, which I totally get. But Sun Devil Stadium had like 70,000 some odd seats, so it's a different story. But Arizona Stadium has filled those seats in the past.
But they were not going to now. So move people, and you know what? It's all mobile tickets. You send them new tickets and say, hey, guess what? We upgraded your seats so you don't have to climb 18 ramps to get up to the third deck.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fair point for now, but I think that those seats, when Arizona starts winning again, those seats will be utilized again. Let me just the last thing I'll mention here for football for the time being. You know me, Eric. I'm as cynical as they come, okay? But I think Arizona is going to win a football game this season. I don't know if it's going to be this weekend. I would love it if it was, just so we could get this damn losing streak over with, because I am sick to death of it. And we're going to save our predictions for the end of the show. But I don't think Arizona is going to go 0-12. Feel free to replay this if they do. And that'll teach me for, trying to be a little bit optimistic, obviously. But I don't think Arizona is going to go 0-12. I saw enough out of that Oregon game to me to think there's going to be a win in there somewhere. Is it against UCLA? I'd love it if it was. I don't know. But I think they're going to win at least one game this season, even after that loss to NAU. I still believe it.
Well, I think next week against Colorado is going to be a big shot, and as is homecoming against a pretty bad Cal team on November 6th. All right, coming up, we have two really cool interviews, the past and the present of Arizona football. Our buddy Scooby Wright is going to join us, and then Shane had a chance to sit down with Drake Anderson, running back for this year's Wildcats football team, here on Wildcat Country, presented by Backcourt Marketing. Well, Shane, it's one of my favorite guests that we have on. I think this is the third time we've had him on. He is the greatest defensive player, at least in my time of watching Arizona football, and that's Scooby Wright. Joins us here on Wildcat Country. As always, great to have you on. I guess I should ask you right off the bat. I like that. Nice hat there. For those who are watching on video, I have to ask you, this year's team, 0-4, it's been a rough go thus far. What's your level of enthusiasm for watching Arizona football in 2021?
I don't know. Well, when you're down in the dumps and there's nowhere to go except for up, that's where the magic is made. So hopefully they're making some magic. Coach Fisch is doing the best he can with what he's got, and then hopefully over the years to come, there's this analogy of the bamboo tree. If you guys ever heard of it, the first year it doesn't grow. And then I think it's like the second year it doesn't grow. And the third year it grows 30 feet every single year after that. So I don't know, faith of a mustard seed.
I really hope we're not have to wait till year 3 for a victory. Hopefully we'll get at least one this year. But for those watching, show everyone your hat again, because I think Coach Rod sent you that hat, right? Hard Edge Football.
And I thought I would still sport it for Coach Rod tonight.
That was great, yeah, because we had you and Coach Rod and Raquel on before last year's Territorial Cup debacle, which we won't talk about, and he ended up sending you the hat, I remember. So.
Yeah, that was funny. That was a good time, Coach Rod. That was crazy what happened to Rhett. He's recovered and stuff, though.
Yeah, sounds like he's doing okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, Scooby, I don't know how much you've watched of this team, and frankly, I'm not going to judge you if you've tuned out, but – I got to ask you about the NAU game, because I think we were all just in disbelief, especially after the guy had 13-0. What are your thoughts as you're watching that game and as you realize that they're actually going to lose that game?
So I watched two full games. It was the NAU game and then it was the Oregon game. So I watched the NAU game, and it was kind of rough to watch because he just couldn't get the run game going. it was like, this is going to sound bad, but a Pac-12 team a Pac-12 team versus a FCS team, they should be able to pound the ball 2.5 yards in a cloud of dust every single time and not have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where my frustration was. They were trying to get too fancy, this and that. And the defense was kind of doing their thing a little bit here and there, but they were still getting run on. And if like that was me, if that like all I could think about was if I was playing in that locker room and it was halftime, I could imagine what Coach Castile and all those other coaches would be saying in locker rooms. It's like, that just isn't right. That's unacceptable. That's just not the standard. And it's crazy how that's just becoming what it is. It's like you seeing the guys not sprint to the football. You seeing the guys, like there's always only 1 or 2 guys taking somebody down. There's never 6 guys to the ball. So that's the one thing that I've noticed a little bit from watching the 2 games.
So you mentioned you watched the Oregon game, and through 3 quarters, we were starting to think maybe 2014 flashback, and then of course the fourth quarter happened, and then that went out the window. But any positives you saw in that game on either side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean the positives were that they could. See, that's this crazy thing about college football. You can think about the scenarios where, okay, Oregon, who did they just beat? They just beat Ohio State the week before, correct?
Yeah, a couple weeks earlier. Yeah, like 2 weeks earlier, I think.
Yeah, and that was a top 10, top 5 national college, big-time college football game.
Yeah.
So you take that into consideration. Okay, you're going into it. Wow, this game could be a slaughter. It could be really ugly. Like you just said, they stick tough for 3 quarters. Fourth quarter kind of wheels blow off. But I feel like that just goes back to more maturity and having a young team and not having guys used to being in those big games and playing big. You have to be able to show up. Your big-time players have to play in big-time games. And I feel like that's where the maturity comes in a little more.
Yeah, and I think when you look at this team, Scooby, they're missing a guy, on defense that, really leads the group. And you kind of took over that role as your freshman season went along in 2013. When did you kind of notice that transformation just in your playing days of when you had to be the man? You get on campus and then you obviously grew into – at what point did you know, hey, I'm the man here?
I never really had that I'm the man moment, quote unquote, but the moment where the torch kind of got passed to me was when it was going into my sophomore year spring when I had to make all the calls and plays and stuff and, hey, look everybody in the eyes in the huddle and get that going and make sure everything was right on the field. But it wasn't just that. There were some great players on that defense too. There was Reggie Gilbert, who played 4 years in the NFL. There was the Will Parks, who played in the NFL for a lot of years. There was Jared Tevises. There was Dan Pettinato. So there was a lot of good core players, the Shaq Richardsons. So there was a lot of good players that did their job well and did what they were coached to do. So it just made my job easy to go make plays because that's the way it was designed.
How did you kind of handle, and I don't think we've asked you this yet, how did you handle when the hype started to get on you, especially after the Oregon game in 2014? You were everywhere that clip of you with Mariota was everywhere. I mean, ESPN and all the other college football highlights, Twitter, everything like that. How did you handle that pressure? I mean, did it take a toll on you or did you enjoy it?
No, it was just kind of whatever. I mean, I knew it came with it. I mean, if you played well, you were going to get noticed. And I feel like that's where people get backwards nowadays. I feel like they want to get noticed before you play well. If you play well, that's when you get noticed. So that's where people get caught in that cycle, especially nowadays. I feel like with all the Twitter, this and that, and social media, and everybody even crap, the guys are even getting paid now. That should even be more an incentive to go out there and play. Like, are you serious? Like, if you're out there and a college player and you're not playing the hardest you can every single play, even if before you weren't getting paid, come on, man. And now you're getting paid and you can go change your parents' lives, go change your life if you really want to. Like, that should be the motivation.
Scooby, this is kind of a simple question, but I'm a simple guy, so you have to forgive me. But when it comes to college football on the defensive side of the ball, is it more about the players and the ability there or about the coaches and the schemes they put in place?
See, I feel like that's where it has to be a happy medium. You have to have the right players doing the right things that has to do. You never want to put players in bad situations. If you know you have a young corner, you never want to go out there and put that guy in man coverage in a backside 3-by-1 situation. you want to make sure that safety's over the top to have him help because you know that corner is young and he can't hang on his own. So you have to have the halo over the top. So, I mean, I feel like coaches just have to be able to coach the players the right way and know what they're good at and stick to what they're good at and not overcomplicate things. So
let me ask you about the happier times going back to 2014. I know we've asked you about a bunch of different games. One thing I don't think we've asked you about specifically is the 2014 game against Cal, and with the whiteout coming up against UCLA, that whiteout game. Yeah. You weren't on the field for obviously the big play at the end, the Hail Mary, but what was your perspective watching that final series and that final play and the aftermath of it?
That game was crazy. I was talking to my dad about it a couple weeks ago because we were somehow the clip came up, or we were walking by and there's a picture in the house, and yeah, that game was wild. Because what was the deficit going into the fourth quarter? Wasn't we down it was like 20 points, 24 points, or something like that?
Yeah, I think it was like 36-13 going in the fourth quarter, something like that. Yep.
Yeah, so it was like right on the cusp of getting ugly if they scored another touchdown. So I remember we were just going to that fourth quarter saying, well, we got to get our crap together. And I don't remember what happened. I think we got like two onside kicks back to back, and then the Hail Mary. That was crazy. All I really remember from that final drive is the ball being caught, sprinting onto the field, and taking out a student who was on the field, like running full speed, and the dude just was on the ground. I'm like, my bad, I'm sorry. And then somehow I ended up with the big ass U of A flag running around. But no, that was one of the funnest games, probably looking back.
Yeah, and if you remember that last drive too, Arizona got the ball in like their own 10. Then I believe Anu had a big completion to Caleb Jones, but that got called back. If I remember correctly, there was like a penalty.
Yeah.
Right, Shane? Something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
And I remember there was one of the games, at least being in the stands, where it was like, I can't leave yet just because something just feels like they're going to make a comeback. You know, everybody's leaving at the end of the third quarter. And I don't know, Scooby, did you ever pay attention to that? Did you ever pay attention to the crowd when they would leave or when they would show up? Did you ever notice that when you were playing?
Yeah, I remember one time that stood out especially was my freshman year, actually. It was
Oregon game.
Yep.
Yeah,
that was wild. I remember walking out in the game, and there was like, oh, there's not a lot of people here. There's a home game. I remember walking out to a home game and saying that as a freshman, like, oh, there's not a lot of people here playing Oregon. I think that'd be a big game. I remember coming back at halftime, the whole entire stadium was packed. And I was like, what is happening? And then it was loud as rocket.
Well, you I think set the table for that. Well, first of all, it was raining before the game started, and so
that was another thing. It was raining.
Yeah, it was raining. So then the rain stops like in the early first quarter. Then you make that crazy play with the tipped interception.
Yeah,
and Stewie doesn't like to talk about that because he should have scored a touchdown.
Right, but still, I mean, that was the play that. And I remember taking pictures on my phone of the crowd at the beginning of the game. I always do that. I post something on Twitter like, oh, here's the crowd shot. And then by the end of the game, I think it's still the background of my Twitter page, my cover photo of a crowded Arizona stadium from that game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah, I have a painting or a picture. It's such a cool picture. And it's like the sun's hitting it right. And that's the Oregon game. And I think I know exactly what picture you're talking about.
What was your favorite home game that you played at Arizona, would you say?
Favorite home game?
And then, because there's a lot to do. I mean, you got the Hail Mary that Shane brought up. You got the ASU game to go to the Fiesta or to go to the Pac-12 championship game. You had the crazy Washington finish that year. You had college game day the following year, albeit that wasn't a great game, but leading up to it. What stands out to you? What was your number one?
Probably the one that just doesn't feel real, that it was just looking back, was probably the Cal game. Just because we were down, like we said, it was 38-13 headed into the fourth quarter. I mean, right on the cusp of getting ugly. But then that ASU game was a little different just because it was like, I think the first time in school history, both teams were in the top 15. So that was another big game. Like, that's probably, looking back, one of the biggest home games in school history if you really want to think about big-time games in that school. So, I mean, I would probably say the ASU game because it was just more meaningful as a program, was in that sense, I guess. Yeah.
And I'll have to admit, I got offered tickets to that Oregon game in 2013, but I wasn't feeling great. And honestly, I thought Oregon was going to win, so I didn't feel too bad about it. And like, it's still one of my biggest life's regrets while having to watch that game on TV and just like being amazed by this. So I will admit I was a bad fan, and I made the excuse I wasn't feeling great. So I will admit that.
At least you own it, Shane. At least you're owning it.
I absolutely do. I absolutely do. But I just remember that play that you referenced, Eric, could just set the tone from the beginning, and it was just amazing that it wasn't just a win, but it was a rout of a very good Oregon team. Yeah, and
Shane, the thing is, I've never, as Scooby said, I've never been in a stadium where it grew. I mean, you're talking like 50% capacity growth from first quarter to fourth quarter. I've never seen anything like
the opposite of most Arizona games.
Yeah, right.
Especially in the student section. Let me ask you, Scooby, and we talked a little bit about before we started recording. You're working toward becoming a firefighter. Where are you at in that process?
So we just had midterms. I'm in the academy right now. We just had midterms, and just getting it done. We'll get done in December. 15th is my last day. So after that, I'll have my firefighter 1 and firefighter 2, and then I'll be looking to apply to places. So.
And just mention to our guy Barrett Baker, who's a battalion chief at Tucson Fire, if you're looking to hire. Scooby might be looking to come back to Tucson in some capacity. I don't know if you're looking to come back to Tucson or not, but you'd be a celebrity firefighter for sure.
Appreciate the plug, Shane.
Of course, anytime. Hey, you wrote one of the forewords for my last book, so I'll help you out however I can. Last thing for you, I know you started an MMA career it was about a year or so ago now. You had your first fight. Are you still fighting, or is working toward becoming a firefighter taking up all your time right now?
So I'm still training. I've competed in Muay Thai and Jiu Jitsu. I'm looking to compete in MMA probably in January. So that's kind of what I'm shooting for. I've been kind of the academy is Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. So I'm still able to train every single day, but it's just not able to compete because everything is on the weekends, and I have class from 8 to 5 on the weekends, unfortunately. But I'm enjoying the fire stuff. It's keeping me busy. I'm learning it. It's a new skill that I'll be looking to be better at for the next 20 years and build on.
I mean, let's be honest, a firefighter and an MMA fighter. I mean, you're going to, first of all, a celebrity firefighter, as Shane said, and then you're going to kill people. Hopefully not literally in the octagon. So,
between saving people as a firefighter and beating them up at MMA, it'll kind of balance out, right?
Yeah, it's all about the law of opposites, right?
All right. So I got the last one for you, Scooby. And you and I talked about this on Twitter, and I referenced this probably in March about your college Hall of Fame eligibility. Okay. Want to go over this again. So the criteria for induction is a player must have received major first-team All-American recognition. True. Eligible for consideration 10 years after his last year of intercollegiate football played. So that would be 2025. Your football achievements are considered first, but the post-football record as a citizen is also weighed. You're good there. You must have played your last year of intercollegiate football within the last 50 years, agreed. And you must have ended your professional athletic career prior to the time of nomination. So basically, I think you're getting in around 2032. I'm making that prediction right now. What do you think?
I don't know. I think I need some hype man to help me out with that in that category.
I think that's what Shane and I are here for in Wildcat Country. Honestly, you were the best defensive player that I've seen in my 21 years of going to Arizona football games. And it's always good to talk to you. And best of luck with the firefighter training and MMA training. And we'll talk to you again soon, hopefully.
Yeah, no doubt. I always appreciate the kind words, and you guys hyped me up. And that'd be cool to get that bus rolling one day.
Future Hall of Famer Scooby Wright here on Wildcat Country.
I want to read you a message from Josette, a small business owner in Scottsdale. Josette says, Backcourt Marketing created a social media strategy for all of my gyms. They post engaging content every day and have really brought up the analytics on all of my pages. We meet to go over marketing ideas every month, and I really appreciate their personalized approach. That, in a nutshell, is the kind of return on your investment that you can expect when you trust Backcourt Marketing to fulfill your company's social media needs. This is a company that helps businesses reach their target audience online and build a brand that will crush the competition. They're a dedicated, knowledgeable team of brand advocates, designers, and creative writers who will help take your business to the next level. make sure to get your business noticed. Call 480-744-6173. That's 480-744-6173. Or email team, TEAM, at backcourtmarketing.com to get started. And remember, Backcourt Marketing is the marketing agency for those who love competition. Excited to be joined on Wildcat Country by Chandler High School alum and Arizona Wildcats running back, their leading rusher heading into the weekend, Drake Anderson, who transferred from Northwestern to join the Wildcats this season. Drake, thanks for taking time to chat today. And first of all, I just got to tell you, my nephews all went to Hamilton, so I hope you don't hold that against me. But first question for you. When you look at the results of the first 4 games of the season, did the week off come at the right time for this team?
Most definitely. I definitely think we needed a week off to recharge and whatnot. Coach Fisch been preaching we got an 8-week shot coming up, and we got, obviously it's going to be a long 8 weeks. We're going to play some physical football, but definitely was. I mean, after coming off playing the number 3 team at the time, number 3 team in the nation, obviously our team's going to be a little banged up, but definitely feel like that week off was much needed. We came back. Most of the team was able to get home, see their family, which was nice, and just recharge a little bit. Much needed for sure.
Yeah, and I think most Wildcat fans took away a lot of positives from that Oregon game. And being able to hang with one of the nation's top-ranked teams for at least 3 quarters. It was a 1-score game going into the 4th. What were some of your big takeaways from that game?
More than anything, I just realized that we're a good team, and we can play with some of the best teams in college football. I don't know exactly what BYU and Oregon are ranked right now, but I know they're both AP top 25. And honestly, our record doesn't show how good of a team we are. But I mean, hands down, we're the best 0-4 team in the nation, without a doubt. But yeah, more than anything, I think that was an eye-opening experience for the team. I don't know if some people weren't really all in and believed like how good of a team we are. I think that's when it really clicked in our heads that, we could really do this. We can be a contender.
Tell me about the touchdown you scored late in the 3rd quarter against Oregon to make it a 1-score game. It was your first in an Arizona uniform. You got tripped up on the way, but you still found your way into the end zone. Tell us about that play and just what was going through your head after you scored that touchdown.
I think that was right. That was right after the safety. So we definitely had the momentum. I could feel it. The crowd was quiet. Like I said, when I got in the end zone, it was complete silence. I think we probably had about 200, 300 fans, and they had them all the way in the top. So you could barely hear them. But yeah, it was just at that point, we was dropping the ball. We're not going to be stopped from getting in the end zone. I know how Coach Fisch called the play, got me the ball. So I had to get in the end zone.
Let me back up for a minute and ask about your journey to Tucson. Was Arizona a school you were interested in coming out of high school?
Most definitely. We actually played the state championship game here. I think I had like 3-4 touchdowns, rushed for like close to 200 yards, had a really good game. I was honestly expecting the offer after that game, but it never came through. I think what happened was just with me being so late into the scene, I really only played 1 year of varsity football. So at that point, most of the scholarships were already given out. I know my senior year, they offered 2 other running backs in my class. So obviously there wasn't any more room, but I did go to the camp and I did well, but I didn't have any film. So that's why they ultimately didn't offer me at the time. But being in high school, I definitely really wanted to stay home, but I really didn't have the option to stay home, so I had to go out of state.
Well, tell me about how it came about that you end up playing for Scotty Graham and Jedd Fisch at Arizona. Who reached out to who? How did that process all shake out?
Oh, I want to say it was 1 or 2 days after being in the portal. Coach Fisch had DM'd me on Twitter, and I think we got on the phone later that night. And then after that, I'm pretty sure I called Gunner up. He had DM Gunner too, and we were like, shoot, let's make it happen. And it was pretty much a no-brainer once that offer came through. It really wasn't much thinking in the process. I mean, coming out of high school, I always wanted to play in the pack, and obviously I didn't have that opportunity, but I mean, being able to play in the Pac and being close to home, it was a no-brainer.
What do you think of Tucson? Had you spent much time there before you came to play football out there?
When I was younger, I used to run track, and we would have a track meets out here like once or twice a year. So I never really spent that much time. And I played a couple football games out here. We would stay at what's the hotel? One of the resorts out here. So I'm not too like in the downtown area, but I'm familiar with the city for sure.
What do you think of it so far now that you've had a little more time to spend out here?
I definitely like it. It's a little more laid back than what I'm used to. Definitely like I just like how close everything is. Like about 5 minutes from the facility, got a grocery store right by my house, literally 30 seconds, and it's just quick and efficient. I got the crowd therapy like 5 minutes from my house. I just got everything where I need close.
You know, obviously the results on the field haven't been what you all want to this point, but tell us about the mindset of this team after having a week off, heading into a big home game against UCLA. Is there still that positive vibe during practices and weight training and everything you do going into this next game?
Most definitely. If anything, each of those losses are just making us more hungry. But like I said earlier, we're ready to start this 8-game run, and it's just I feel like we're so close, and we just need one game, and then they're just gonna start adding up.
You know, Jordan Mcleod looks like he might be the starting quarterback for the rest of the season, and he made some mistakes, but he definitely did a lot of good things at Oregon. The reaction from fans, at least on social media, tend to be pretty positive. How does the team feel about Jordan?
Very good. I think we're definitely in good hands with Jordan. I think that's definitely the best we move the ball all. That's definitely the best we move the ball all year.
Yeah.
We pretty much it was a dominant offensive performance. I want to say we had the ball for like 40 minutes, and I'm pretty sure like in every offensive category we did better than except for the turnovers, but we can fix that. But yeah, we're definitely looking forward to move forward with Jordan.
Tell people a little bit about Drake Anderson away from football. Any hobbies or interests away from the game that maybe most people don't know about you?
Right now, not that the football season started.
Right.
I really don't have too many hobbies outside of football, locked in, school and football. But during the off season, play a little Call of Duty from here and there. But other than that, I'm really just a football guy. If I'm not on the game, I'm watching some film, I'm doing recovery, I'm getting some extra weights. I'm just big football guy.
You live, breathe, eat, and sleep the game.
Pretty much, yeah. That's what I grew up in.
Yeah. My last question for you, just because, and I don't mean to skip ahead to the end of the season, but since you're from the Valley, I got to ask, you got to be familiar with the Territorial Cup rivalry. What does that rivalry mean to you? Do you have any favorite memories of it growing up?
Not too much. Honestly, growing up, I really wasn't too involved with either of the teams, but just from my first day on campus, it was just like almost like a hatred I developed. I don't even know how to explain it, but it was just almost instilled in me, and nothing even had to be said. It's just like understood. We don't even refer to them as that's the team up north.
The school up north, yep.
Uh-huh.
It's funny how some things don't change. You talk to
get back down. That's about 15 minutes from my house.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's funny how some things don't change. You talk to guys who played in the 40s and 50s and 60s, and they'll tell you the same thing. But all right, Jake, we really appreciate your time. Taking time to join us on Wildcat Country. Best of luck against UCLA going forward the rest of the season, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Shane, just two awesome interviews that we had, Scooby Wright and Drake Anderson. We'll start with just very organic and fun, to get a chance to talk to him just about attendance, how much he notices, of fans being in the stands, and, just remembering that Oregon game. And it's funny, I actually did not know that you were supposed to go to that game in 2013 and still feel bad about it. Ironically, that was an interesting story for me. I didn't know much.
Well, the weather wasn't great, and I remember I think I had a cold or something. So and truthfully, if Arizona was better that year, it was a bigger game, I probably would have gotten my butt down there. So I thought they were going to lose, and I didn't bother, and I still enjoy watching it on TV. But yeah, no, it was awesome having Scooby on. I love it. It's just like three guys talking. I mean, not like we never played football, but he let alone at the level that he did. But we're just like, we're remembering as fans, he's remembering as a player, and that's what I love about doing this show with you is just being able to just sit down and chat about, especially about better times right now, because we need those conversations. And then, chatting with Drake Anderson, local guy coming out of Chandler High School. He was sort of overlooked. He was a 2-star guy coming out of high school, and he was like he mentioned during the interview, he was overlooked. He did well at Northwestern. He got noticed by Jedd Fisch, and then he came out here, and I think he's got the right message. And I love how hard he runs. He runs harder than and bigger than he is. He's our leading rusher right now. It was great seeing him get his first touchdown against Oregon. Hopefully we'll see more of that. Hopefully Arizona will have more room to run, and hopefully Drake Anderson's going to lead the way. He's one of the guys that, the next several years I'm excited to see more of for sure.
Yeah, he's been intriguing as far as a newcomer, and it's a solid interview with you and him, and just looking forward to seeing if he can bust one. Bust a big run here. We need that. We haven't seen a long Arizona run. I don't believe in the first 4 games of the year, at least as memory serves me correctly. So it'd be nice to see him break off about a 60 or 70 yarder against UCLA. And we will make our predictions here coming up soon. But a couple of the things I want to talk about, Shane, before we move along to the predictions part. First of all, men's basketball had the red-blue game last Saturday. Just a couple of quick thoughts from you. Who stood out, and how encouraged were you by what you saw from what Arizona has this season?
Well, I think we should take as much away from this game, quote unquote, as we should from the spring football game in terms of how well guys are going to play against actual opponents, which is to say not much. It's hard not to be impressed with Kim Aiken, 8 of 10 from the field, 4 from 3. And Ben Mather and Azuolas Tubelis both look good. I think they can both be first team all Pac-12 guys this season. One of the reasons I'm as cynical as I am is because, in moments when I express even a little bit of optimism, I typically don't get rewarded for it. I get kicked in the crotch instead. But I think this team, the men's basketball team, has a chance to be pretty good. Not Final Four good by any means, but certainly NCAA tournament good, eligibility permitting. If Matherin and Tubelis take the steps forward, I think they can. And they have enough depth and shooting to have a strong, say, 8-guy rotation, which I think they will, especially when Pelle Larsson comes back. I think this team could be as good as any team in the Pac-12 outside of UCLA. There's going to be some growing pains. There's a lot of new pieces. The returning guys are going to have to adjust to a new coaching staff. But I'm excited about this team. I really am. I really hope they will be eligible for the NCAA tournament because, health permitting, I think they'll get there, given the opportunity to get there.
Yeah, and then one thing that stood out to me, and I'm not going to go over stats because they were what they were, but the depth on this team. This team can go 9 or 10 deep, and I think that's really an underrated factor as the season goes along. Now, let's be honest here, Shane. This team's not winning the Pac-12. I mean, UCLA is probably the best team in the nation. Arizona's not going to probably beat them. This UCLA team, should have been in the national championship game. They outplayed Gonzaga in the Final Four. And no reason they shouldn't get back there again this year. But this Wildcats team, I think, is good enough to be top 3 in the conference. They can be right there with Oregon. Oregon lost some pieces. Arizona has 2 guys in Matherin and Tubelis who very well could be all Pac-12.
Yep.
And if you want to throw Kirk Kriisa in there, and we don't even know, what we're going to get from the rest of the guys, but you've seen with Matherin and Tubelis, those guys, assuming they play to their potential, which is what we saw last year, 2 guys in the all Pac-12 team at the end of the year. And that pretty much, to me, if that happens, Arizona's a top 4 team in the conference. So that was encouraging. Number 2, the women's basketball schedule came out. And normally, women's basketball, you're like, okay, well, that's cool. This is a team that was 1 shot away from a national championship that beat UConn as like a 9-1 underdog in the semifinal, in the Final Four last year.
There are still some sports moments where I think back, like, did that really happen? And this is one of them. I used to cover the women's basketball team. I don't follow them as closely as I did the men's up until recently. But it's still so hard to believe because of how bad they were several years ago and how average they look going into the NCAA tournament as well. Everything they did it's just amazing that they came that close. I know it's painful that they didn't win it, but just the fact that they came that close is still so hard to believe. As far as it's also funny with the women's basketball team. We saw the red-blue game. There were still some seats available for that, which is the first time I think in a long time that's happened. The women's side is going the other way. They've like doubled their season ticket sales already from 2 years ago or something like that. They're doing very well. So the attendance might actually be kind of closer for the women's and the men's. Hopefully the men's will still sell out while the women's approaches it. It's also good to see the women's team also be able to schedule some good opponents because I remember in 2004, they finished tied with Stanford for the Pac-10 regular season championship, and they made it to the Pac-10 tournament championship game, lost a close one to Stanford. They only got a 9 seed in the NCAA tournament because their non-conference schedule was so weak. So it's nice to see that slowly starting to turn around. And certainly the noise that Arizona made in last season's tournament will help them be seen as a marquee non-conference opponent for the foreseeable future, as long as Adia Barnes is there.
Well, and the best thing you can say about a program of Arizona women's basketball's caliber is they're relevant. You can't say that about the football team. Sorry, but it's true. And men's basketball, you can say that just because they're Arizona, not because of anything they've really done since 2018? I mean, let's be honest. I mean, they're always going to be relevant because they're Arizona basketball. Yeah. And that's what Lute Olson developed. But with women's basketball, they're relevant. That people are paying attention to them. And when the first preseason poll comes out, the Wildcats are probably going to be in there. And when's the last time we could have said that before, 2020? I mean, you couldn't. I mean, it's been too long to think the last time Arizona was ranked in October, November, in women's basketball. Well,
yeah, and, they don't have Ari McDonald. And she's a generational talent, and she was just named to the WNBA All-Rookie team. But I really like the way Adia Barnes reloaded this team. I think they have maybe a bit more depth than they did last season, despite not having Ari McDonald. I think one of the big keys for success this season for them is going to be Kate Reese. She was the best recruit in Arizona women's basketball history at the time of her commitment. She's been good. She's had some standout performances, but I want to see her take that next step in her senior season. Maybe now with Ari gone, she'll be expected to step into that role a bit more. Her numbers overall, including her field goal percentage, took a bit of a dip last season compared to the season before. I think if she can have a sensational senior year, I think the Wildcats could be at the top of a very good Pac-12 again. The women's side, Pac-12 is a lot deeper than the men's side. And they can make another NCAA tournament run. But I think that if she takes a step forward and the surrounding pieces come together, they're going to have better shooters. They didn't have a lot of shooters last season. I think that's going to change this season. I don't know they're going to make a Final Four run again, but I think they could definitely get back to the tournament and win a couple of games.
Sweet 16 or bust, right? Like we said last year, and then they made it to the national championship game with the ball in Ari's hands at the, who took the last shot of the season. So you never know how that's going to go. All right. Well, before we move on to talk our college football predictions weekly, and I'll give the update on those, I want to give kind of a shout out to our sponsor, Backcourt Marketing. And just if you're a business owner or if you know somebody that owns a business, and you need social media help, and trust me, if I owned a business, I would need social media help, I'd go to Backcourt Marketing. So give them a call, 480-744-6173, or email them at team@backcourtmarketing.com. So make sure to thank them and support them for being a sponsor of Wildcat Country.
Let me just add real quick to that, Eric. Our friend Megan Coughlin, who runs Backcourt Marketing, she does not sleep. She works her tail off. She's got a lot of great testimonials on her website. Go there to backcourtmarketing.com. Definitely check them out for sure.
Well, last week she joined us for picks, and she had a rough one picking games last week. I had her at 3-7. You and I both went 5-5. Not really unimpressive.
And again, this is not against the spread. This is just straight up picks.
Yeah. Miserable. Yeah. Shane and I have been miserable this year. Basically, we are both 28-22 straight up in picking games, which is not good. So we're going to try to do better this week. We're going to try to give you some winners. We're going to start. There are only 4 Pac-12 games, so we'll go quickly with the other ones. But Georgia and Alabama are the two best teams. We can debate who's going to win the national title or whatnot, who's going to win the SEC. First of all, Georgia goes to Auburn. Alabama goes to Texas A&M. Now I know Auburn had a big win against LSU last week on the road. A&M has been a disappointment. Are either of those teams on upset alert in your mind, or are they too good for their opponents?
No. But Georgia and Alabama are going to roll. I did correctly predict Auburn's road win over LSU.
Yes,
that was one of them. But LSU doesn't look especially impressive this season. So I don't see Auburn putting up many points against Georgia. I think Bulldogs take care of business on the road. Someone put out an interesting stat the other day. Kevin Sumlin was one game better through his first 41 games at A&M than Jimbo Fisher has been, which proves that Kevin Sumlin is more than capable of coaching when he feels like it. But I mean, Bama's going to roll in this game. I don't think it's going to be close. I think Alabama and Georgia get some easy road wins. Yeah,
I mean, Auburn was impressive last week. That was a good win for them at LSU, who I don't think is that good, obviously, as UCLA proved. But I think Georgia steamrolls Auburn, and I think Alabama crushes A&M. And by the way, Shane, Sumlin did great at A&M because Johnny Manziel was – I mean, I know he developed Johnny Manziel, but the guy still won the Heisman Trophy. True. It helps when you have a Heisman Trophy quarterback. Just saying. All right, so Georgia and Alabama last week crushed Arkansas and Ole Miss, respectively. And now those two teams play each other at Ole Miss. Who are you picking here? You picking Arkansas or Ole Miss to bounce back?
I'm going to go super simple with this one and just go with the home team. I think Lane Kiffin's guys get back on track. I think Ole Miss was at least a little more competitive. I really expected Arkansas to at least, put some points on the board. So I think the Razorbacks were exposed a little bit. Ole Miss is at home. By default, I'm going to go with Lane Kiffin's team.
I miss Lane Kiffin in the Pac-12. I wish he'd come back to USC with their job opening. Not going to happen. But that whole pregame thing with the popcorn last week, that stupidity, what he did on CBS. I mean, he got a dose of karma. But I actually enjoy him as a head coach, and I wish he'd be back in our conference. Big game, usually every year, Oklahoma and Texas at the State Fair in Dallas. This is where College Game Day is going, curiously. I'm picking the upset, Shane. I think Texas finds a way. Bijan Robinson, who, by the way, is from Tucson, I think very well could make a run at this Heisman Trophy if he gets to 2,000 yards. Steve Sarkisian, another former Pac-12 coach, I think this is his signature win. Texas beats Oklahoma and knocks them from the ranks of the undefeated.
Yeah, I really want to take Texas in this game, especially because OU just hasn't looked nearly as dominant as we thought going into the season. And I think Steve Sarkisian is going to do well at Texas. I don't think he's going to win his first Red River Showdown, though, so I'm going to go with the Sooners.
So the big game this weekend is a battle of top 5 teams in Iowa. That is Penn State is traveling to Iowa. And, they have that really cool first quarter tradition after the first quarter where everybody in the stadium waves at the Children's Hospital. Yeah. One of the coolest new traditions. Good. And it's organic. It wasn't planned. And that's what makes it so cool. Such a great tradition. Can James Franklin's team keep it rolling? I think they've won, 9 in a row or something like that. And I mean, they're on a roll right now. And whereas Iowa has also been great lately, obviously this is a big game for the Big Ten and across the country. Who you got?
This may be an early college football playoff elimination game. Both teams look legit. I've been a little more impressed with Iowa, and they're at home. I think they've looked a little bit better against some better teams. The Colorado State game notwithstanding, but yeah, especially because Iowa's at home, I'm going to roll with the Hawkeyes.
I am too. I'm not sold on Penn State. I know they had that win over Auburn, but I'm just not. To me, they don't look like a top 5 team. Iowa does. That defense is really good. I think Iowa wins a low-scoring, ugly football game. All right, we got 4 games in the Pac-12. The first is Oregon State at Washington State. Oregon State is the talk of the conference. I mean, they beat Washington last week and beat USC the week before. They should be ranked, even though they're not. Do you think the Cougars, also coming off a nice win at Cal, can knock off the Beavs, or do you think the Beavs are for real?
Yeah, Washington State winning at Cal was the most surprising Pac-12 result of last weekend for me. I got 3 out of 5 games wrong. I got my upset pick again right, and that was one of the 2 I got right. I didn't pick either of these teams to win last weekend. I got them wrong. Beavers have been impressive, like you said. I'd feel better about them if this game was in Corvallis, but I tend to think that Washington State's win at Cal was a little bit more of a fluke than Oregon State's sustained success early in the season. So I'm going to go roll with Oregon State on the road.
I am too, Shane. I think Oregon State is that good. And I think they can give Oregon a challenge in the North. I mean, I think the Civil War is going to be a really interesting game. Oregon losing that game last week. I know you picked Stanford. We'll talk about them here shortly. But Oregon State's pretty good. And after they win in Pullman this weekend, they are going to be ranked. And that's cool for the Pac-12. See one of their lesser teams. And by the way, it's not a bad thing for Arizona fans either, because Oregon State, when Jonathan Smith took over, was dreadful. I think they were 0-12 before he took over. And they were pretty bad, at least in his early years. So this is a sign that, turnarounds can happen. Just want to point that out. All right. Utah, who had a bye week last week, is going to USC, who look better at Colorado. But USC's last 2 home games against Oregon State and Stanford have not gone very well. I'm really tempted to pick Utah, but I'm going to reluctantly pick the home Trojans to win this one.
All right, I'll pick the Utes for you, Eric. I think they're finally starting to put it together like we expected they would. USC won at Colorado last weekend. Big freaking deal. Colorado's terrible. They can't move the ball. I probably get in trouble by picking so many road teams. That's one of my issues. But I am going to go with Utah. I think they get it done on the road.
All right. We're going to disagree on that one. I think that's our first one that we disagree on. I'm not sure we're going to disagree on this one. ASU looked the part last week in the second half against UCLA. Stanford looked the part against Oregon. I mean, there's a reason the Sun Devils are 2-touchdown favorites. They're at home. It's on Friday night. I mean, ASU should win this, and ASU probably is going to go on and win the South Division and hopefully get steamrolled by Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game.
I actually think this is kind of a tough one to pick. Talent-wise, ASU is certainly better. They're finally seeming to click a little bit more. If there's any talk about, the off-field distractions and all that, they silence that at least for now. I think this is going to be a close, pretty low-scoring game. I think Stanford's coming off a bit of a high after beating Oregon. I'm going to go with the Sun Devils. I think Jaden Daniels is the best player on the field for either team, at least on the offensive side of the ball.
And finally, our last game of the weekend, and I'll pick first, Shane. I'll let you get the last word on this one. But UCLA is at Arizona. Always a rivalry I've enjoyed going to the games. If you think back to, I believe it was 2005, Willie Tuitama's big breakout game was homecoming against a top 10 UCLA team where the Wildcats pulled off a big upset in blowout fashion. You've got the one in 2011 that people have talked about lately. It was the 10-year anniversary of the 42-7 halftime Thursday night debacle with the fake referee and the fight on the field. I mean, it was an epic game. That was a fun one to be at. Let's talk about Saturday. Even though I haven't sounded good for this whole show, I'm assuming I'll be there health-wise, feel good. Just don't sound that great.
You're not going to use that as an excuse like I did for missing the Oregon game, right?
I'm going to try not to. I'm going to try to be there.
Okay.
And I think Arizona keeps this game close. At the beginning of the year, I said, I believe Arizona will keep it a 1-score game going in the fourth quarter against BYU, and they did. I'm going to say the same here, that going in the fourth quarter, we're going to listen to the stupid Kenny Chesney song, which should not be a tradition, but it's going to be an interesting game, and we're all going to be there in the stands. Those of us, nobody's leaving before the fourth quarter. UCLA scores a couple of late touchdowns and wins this game 35-24. Wildcats cover the spread, but don't win the game on Saturday night.
I really don't know what to expect from Arizona in this game, Eric. They've had an extra week to prepare. Jordan Mcleod has gone 2 full weeks of reps as the clear QB1, which is the first time I think that's happened for any quarterback on the roster this season. And like our friend Jeff Dean told us last week, the Bruins' pass defense is not good. I could certainly see this as an upset win for Arizona. It's easy to see a path to that, right? And it would be kind of cool for Jedd Fisch to get his first win as non-interim head coach against the team he was an interim coach for a few years ago. Bottom line for me is after 16 straight losses, I'm in full I'll believe it when I see it mode. Okay. Plus UCLA is going to come to Tucson pretty pissed after what happened against ASU. So I just can't pick Arizona. Would love to see it, but I'm not going to pick it. I'm going to go UCLA 37, Arizona 21.
All right. So you say right on the number, right on the spread number. I say 35-24 Bruins. You say 37-21 Bruins. Well, Shane, we've had an awesome show. Want to thank Scooby Wright for joining us. The great Scooby Wright. Want to thank Drake Anderson for joining you. Sorry I wasn't able to make that, but really cool interview that you had a chance to talk to him. Want to thank our friends at All AZ Sports for what they do in preparing or producing our show. And obviously our sponsor, Backcourt Marketing. Thank you to Megan Coughlin and her team for sponsoring Wildcat Country. So for Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Have a great weekend and bear down and go Wildcats.